Hello and welcome to Astrolunachick's Guide to the Universe. I am Susan, aka Astrolunachick, and it is 9:09 in the morning here on the colorful East Coast, where the leaves are just starting to change like yesterday. It just seems like the summer was not really summer. And then for 2 weeks in September, we had summer, and now it's fall. Ain't that the life? Ain't that the way life goes, though? Suddenly you wake up, the seasons have changed, and the seasons are changing. So, yeah, I mean, we have hit the fall equinox, so it does fit in line with where we're at. And I thought I would pop on this Monday of October the 2nd on one day, numerologically speaking, 10 to 2023. Add it up and you get a 1. So yesterday was a 9. The day before was a 1. No, sorry. Yesterday was a 9. Don't make me do math in the morning. Math in the morning. Yesterday was a 9. Today is a 1. There was an ending. And today is a new beginning. Even if it is just an ending in your perception and how you see things, or a change that is coming, change that you want to make, because the eclipses are upon us. We are coming into our eclipse season. And yeah, it has started. It has started already. And that is because just a few days ago, Mars passed the degree of the eclipse, 21 degrees of Libra, and making thereof a kind of a cockeyed angle to Uranus. So a little bit of a crazy, uncomfortable adjustment and a preview of shocking changes in consciousness that are before us with the eclipses, a portent, if you will, things to come. And the moon today is conjunct Uranus. So we are seeing physical manifestation, concrete evidence within our physicality of the changing perception of reality, the nature of which we are learning is malleable. So I woke up with Hydra on my mind. Somebody write me a song. A constellation Hydra. I don't know. It's maybe it was that song by T-Rex that just kept that line that kept playing in my head. The teeth of the Hydra upon ya. Your dirt is sweet and you're my girl. And I do have a fascination with snakes. Please, no dick jokes. I happen to really like snakes. And of course, being the course of study as I am inclined to look at the hidden and occulted meanings of such things, I look naturally at the metaphorical, the meaning, and symbolism of snakes. In terms of energy, snakes are also, associated with wisdom, um, but all of those traditional esoteric meanings of such things uh, through, I would say, the lens of Judeo Christian uh, religious dogma has made these things to be a symbol of bad things, which in fact they are not. It's just that someone was scared of them, and so they made it the boogeyman. But we have to understand what the symbol actually means and why we might have been steered away from it. Anyway, so that being said, um, I had to look at the stars of this constellation so that I could really dive into a deeper layer of what the meaning is that is being conveyed here. So the constellation Hydra really only has one major star that is named, so recognized by degree. And, some of the fixed stars are pretty far off the ecliptic. And so we would see those as being uh, part of our ancient past, if you will, or um, very deep within the subconscious. So it's not necessarily something that's going to be playing out, let's say, in terms of astrology. However, um, and the reason is because by degree of the zodiac, you might have a planet conjunct a star, but by declination, because they are, let's say, very far north in declination, which means that they're going to be like around Polaris, let's say, the pole star, very high up um, in terms of our view of the horizon. Uh, but stars that are within the bounds of the declination where our planets are moving, north and south of the ecliptic, are generally considered to be um, maybe more accessible, let's say. So, Hydra, and again, as I was saying, there's really only one star that is that has a that has a name, and it is Alphard, Alfrd, and it's located at 27 degrees 17 minutes of Leo. So really we round up to 28. But the declination is about 9 degrees south of the ecliptic. So this would be a star that would be frequently perhaps occulted by, which means conjunction by degree of the zodiac as well as by the declination. Um, so I would consider this to be a pretty impactful star in terms of what we are able to be conscious of. So let's read a little bit about Alphard. So again, 28 degrees of Leo. It is located in the neck of the Hydra, which um, in in snakes, their heart is located in their neck. So um, it's referred to as core hydrae. the heart of the Hydra. And let's see. And I'm reading from constellationofwords.com. So you know I'm not just pulling this out my ass. And there's so much material available, so much information and history with the fixed stars. It's a lot to remember. I don't always remember it. So I like to refer back, and so can you. And I encourage you to do so because the story of the mythology behind the stars is very fascinating. So, reading from that site, you can look it up. The Euphrateans called Hydra the source of the fountains of the great deep. So, fountains, water, subconscious, the great deep, emotions. Ptolemy, according to Ptolemy, the bright stars in Hydra are like the quality of Saturn and Venus. It is said to give an emotional and passionate nature, threatened by great troubles, and to cause some interest in shipping. So we're talking about trade, commerce, uh, relationship, troubles, emotionally. Yeah, Saturn is not, we don't consider it to be passionate, but I mean, Saturn is very serious and somber. And so, maybe, perhaps you could consider that to be passionately committed with taking love affairs very seriously. Let's see. Ptolemy stated that it is of the nature of Saturn and Venus. Yeah, we did that. But according to Alvidas, it is similar to the Sun and Jupiter in sextile, which we actually have that aspect. No, we don't. Sorry, I'm lying. Gives wisdom, musical, and artistic appreciation. That's your Saturn, Venus. Knowledge of human nature, again, Saturn, Venus. Strong passions, lack of self control, immorality, revolting deeds, and a sudden death by drowning, poison, or asphyxiation. Let's see. Yes, it has a Saturn nature, but there is also a degree of influence from Neptune as it relates to Venus. And this is a particularly uh, difficult influence in some respects because it's connected to poisoning, especially blood poisoning, murder by poison, attempts of poison, poisoned hatred in women, meaning, women expressing hatred and being poisoned, overcome by their anger and hatred. Uh, Also, gas poisoning, danger to life by wrong use of drugs, and indulgence in good living. Saturn being the karmic blowback of Venus, the overindulgence in sensual pleasures. Um, what else? Smoke inhalation, danger of suffocation, snake bites, bites by poisonous insects, um, or dog bites, uh, but dogs infected with rabies. Its danger is also marked if either Sun, Moon, Mars, Neptune, Ascendant, or the midheaven are linked up with this star. Poison is also possible in a relationship between a man and a woman. marriage. This is especially true in a male chart. On the material plane, nearly always unhelpful, though if the native is able to conceive it in spiritual sphere, the Saturn Neptune combination may give enlightenment. So that's where we have the uh, serpent influence, serpents being associated with wisdom. And the reason also because the serpent is the serpent energy, also known as the Kundalini. And Kundalini, as it rises up the spine, its destination being the third eye, enlightenment. However, that path is sometimes and often fraught with obstacles because there are things stuck in its path, uh, stuck energy in the chakras. So, this is why we have certain challenges that come up at certain stages of life because as the planets have timed the rising of the energy that is meant to give us access to wisdom and understanding through consciousness. Um, if there are things on the material plane, i.e., blockages, energetic blockages in the chakras, up the spine, um, as the planets make their timed conjunctions and, let's say, oppositions, squares at certain stages of life, then we experience either liberation if we have worked through certain things, um, or we experience crisis and can be very painful, you know, tribulations that we go through in terms of our material security, our ability to create, generate, reproduce, let's say, our self confidence, our ability to have loving and um, safe bonded pairing, as well as family and friendship, amicable relationships, career success, the ability to learn and gain wisdom and speak our truth, to communicate well, um, the loss of our voice, often metaphorically, or that could be quite literal and physical, right on up to the what we would call the third eye, but the pineal gland, and this representing our ability to see things for what they are, not just to see things like, you know, seeing energy or seeing spirits or whatever it might be that we associate with having a activated third eye, although those things are, um, like clear, in terms of like clairvoyance, clear vision. Um, yes, those are associated with an open third eye, but from a consciousness standpoint and awareness, being able to see things as they are, truly, and people for who they are, um, without our filters, without our biases, without our own, self deception or believing in the prevailing narratives, which may not be true. So that is a little breakdown of what we look at in terms of the Hydra constellation as it represents serpent energy. And this particular degree, 28 Leo, was the station within a degree um, that Venus made when she stationed to go retrograde. So Venus is approaching that degree now. She's not quite there yet. She won't be there until the 5th, but the energy is still building because the degree of the planet to the star is very close. And it's what is coming because she's approaching the star. So I remember looking to see what was going on at the time. Um, and there was, at the time when Venus went retrograde, and there was a lot of stories coming out in the media about uh, celebrities, especially females, having difficulties. Um, uh, not, I mean, it wasn't just one sided. It wasn't just like, the woman as the victim, but there were women victimizing women. I mean, look at, what's her name? Lizzo. Isn't that funny though? Lizzo and snakes are in the reptile family, as are lizards, right? Uh, and she has, I believe her son is on Algol, the Medusa. And I think she has a placement around that degree of 28 in Leo. If I'm not mistaken, that could be, I think that's her rising. And her sun in Taurus would be in her 10th house. But anyway, she was one of the first scandals to break out that her dancers were suing her. So, I mean, there were many other stories. I like to follow celebrity gossip and, like true crime and lawsuits. Those are some of my guilty pleasures. So often I am gauging what's going on by what I see in terms of, where's the tide going with things like this. And there are huge, unsolved crimes that look like we've got a breakthrough. It look like these things are going to be exposed. Now, Venus being at this degree and Mars, she's aspecting Mars and the South Node. That's release of the past, right? Yeah, we're letting go of the past. All right. How do we, you know what? I'll tell you, it makes it a whole fuck of a lot easier to let go of the past when you have judgment upon your enemies. I'm serious. Like, you know, it's like, yeah, you don't want to wish bad on anybody, but doesn't it make you feel good when someone who stabbed you in the back finally gets their fucking karma? you know? It's like, it really kind of it helps. But it helps when I mean, it's really better when they see it. If there's healing, if they can come to you and say, I see what I did and I'm sorry. That's the most healing thing, to know that someone gets it and they're working on themselves. But when they keep going on and doing the same shit, it seems like, God, doesn't anyone around them see who they are? Doesn't anyone else see them for who they are? Well, truth is that people do see it and people do overlook it because, looking back on some of the things from, that I've been through, I did see it. But there's reasons why I overlooked it, and not to get into that so much. But what I'm saying is, look at the victims' families that are left behind. Part of the healing is when you have truth and you have justice and someone is made to pay for their deeds. Now, what am I really talking about? Well, if you don't know, if you haven't heard, there was someone arrested and charged or indicted by a grand jury for the murder, should we say assassination, of Tupac, KVD. So I've been following, this is one of the things, obviously, I've been following because it's like, Jesus, almost 30 years now. It's like a big thing. Um, it was a great loss, but it's also like everyone knows. Like, all you have to do is go on YouTube. There's tons of videos out there. It's like the public knows what it was about. The law enforcement, when they made the statement at the press conference, um, they stated that we knew who did it. We knew what it was all about. We knew it was gang violence, and but it makes you wonder, why did it take so long? Well, there's reasons for that, obviously. But for one, the guy confessed, but that was even 5 years back. So then you ask, well, why did it take so long for him to get arrested? It's because this is so much bigger. And it makes you think of the Hydra, right? The Hydra that has many heads. And it is said of the Hydra, you cut off one head and three grow back. And that analogy has been used, I'm sure, many times by frustrated uh, law enforcement to relate to how difficult it is to actually deal with certain things. You're never going to eliminate it. You arrest one, there's always going to be another. But that's another interesting analogy. However, what I'm getting to is that the reason why it took so long is because there's so much more to this investigation, which they are hoping would lead them to evidence against uh, Sean Puffy Combs, P. Diddy, or Diddy, as he's known. And again, I say allegedly because you know, but word has it on the streets, a lot of people believe, and I'm just couching this as I'm just passing along what is the prevailing belief and understanding based on what many, many people have come forward to say, is that obviously he was involved. So I think that's very difficult to prove, but there are also it's not just it's not just the one incident with Tupac. It's the death of his wife, Kim Porter. The people allege that they don't believe that she died of natural causes. And there was a coroner's report, I believe. The first one was, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, um, but I believe it did show poisoning. Um, but, you know, you got money, you can buy whatever influence you want. So the fact that this guy got arrested means that, and he was supposed to be paid for doing this, but apparently he never got his money. So, and then Diddy goes around going back to artists to try to give them back their publishing rights, their royalties, because he owned them, uh, in exchange for signing an NDA. So it makes one scratch your head and say, "Hmm, that sure does look like he knows that there are people who have things that they could say about him that could get him in a lot of trouble." But I think the reason why it's taken so long is that it goes way deeper than that, even, and involves a lot of other people. So stay tuned for that. But as Venus hits that degree, and even today, because we've got the moon conjunct Uranus. Okay, Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, associated with all things within groups, networks, and associations, also the internet and social media, and shocking events. Um, and last week, Venus squared exactly to Uranus when all of this was kind of coming up. So I would expect more information and crazy stuff on the horizon. No pun intended. Oh, no, actually, pun intended. Pun is always intended because what are we here for if not to have fun with puns? But looking at today's aspect with the moon, conjunct to Uranus retrograde in Taurus. Remember, retrograde planets are very strong because they're close to us, they're closer in their orbit at that time. They are also rewinding over territory that they have already crossed over. So they are rewinding and unraveling things from the past. Hmm. Very, very interesting. So look out for that. In other news, I would expect that there's a lot of relationships, shakeups, and breakups, emotional breakdowns and breakthroughs, and a building desire for freedom, if not just the freedom to feel love, to feel that open hearted, uninhibited, childlike love that we might have known before we became so jaded after being hurt and betrayed. But there is the opportunity. That's why I'm saying um, there is the opportunity for us to regain that creativity, um, and flow of energy to generate in a leonine fashion and through our Venusian nature by the opening of the heart chakra and reconnecting with our passion and our need to create and to experience love. But in the midst of that, there is also a need and an opportunity to look at some of the hidden parts, whether it's shame or, mistrust because of the things that people have experienced, maybe some anger and aggression, resentment, jealousy, and maybe some of the things that we've done in response to being wounded, being triggered. Um, Self awareness is key, you know. The key to moving forward. I mean, we all go through this stuff, but the key to moving forward fastest and to keep that energy circulating and not blocked is self awareness. And the more self aware someone is, when we do have issues, we're more likely to stop and say, I'm sorry, I reacted out of my own wounding or, uh, you know, my anger, which is being repressed, and it just came out in that moment. Um, because there's a lot in this chart of the moment that speaks of trying to hold it together, trying to keep things in control, trying to be in control of our emotions and of our reactions. But sometimes it just builds up to the point where, you just hit a wall and shit explodes. It happens. This is a very volatile energy. So, for those of us who are conscious and we're trying to be um, accountable for the management of our emotions and our energy. Listen, we're all human and we have our Achilles heel. We all have it, right? And so with these kind of alignments, um, it's hard not to get triggered. It really is. It really is. But try to keep a sense of humor. That would be my recommendation. Know that it is an intense time, that a lot of people are feeling the pressure because it's building. Like we haven't built up yet to the explosion point, but it is coming. I mean, but it's coming in layers, it's coming in stages. A lot of it is being expressed through our relationships and interactions socially, intellectually, um, with other people, and how things come out within the communication. There is a tendency to take things the wrong way. Um, if there's something within you that is just simmering under the surface, um, try to acknowledge it, try to be aware, try to talk to somebody who you trust, who's not going to judge you or use that against you. Somebody that can just listen and be a sounding board if you need it. Um, because I feel like the antidote in some ways is Mercury. It's also the most difficult part of this aspect, which I'll tell you what it is in a moment. I'll tell you the degrees and the planets, but just trying to give you the big picture. I feel like the release valve, the antidote is Mercury in Virgo. But the thing is, Mercury is opposite Neptune. So it can come out if it's not conscious, if we're not consciously trying to bring it up to the surface to say, this is what it is. We're just going to walk around maybe all frustrated and angsty or not really understanding what's going on within us and then acting on those feelings, causing a big kerfuffle or a little kerfuffle. Um, but the antidote, like I said, lies within the ability of the conscious, the mind, the intellect, the thoughts and communications, Mercury, making it conscious. So Mercury is in Virgo. Virgo is material, practical. It is the practical manifestation of the Pisces energy, which is very sublime. It's unconscious, it's water, it's emotional. So it's trying to bring something of substance and something that the literal mind can grasp. That's Mercury in Virgo. Very literal, very analytical, opposing Pisces, which is undefinable. And, Neptune. Neptune is the planet of Pisces. It's the deep, deep sea of the subconscious, of the unknowable, unfathomable, unobtainable, but unlimited, infinite. So, as much as you can, try to get a handle on what it is that is simmering. And I'm not going to say that everyone has got this seething anger because that's not true. That's just me. And I'm not trying to project my simmering anger on other people. I'm joking. Um, I like to think that my anger is well directed and makes me passionate and creative and a force to be reckoned with. But it's part of the work that I've done on myself to really get in touch with all of the um, sublimated or repressed, unacknowledged anger, which is really, um, how should I put it? When you're talking in terms of the Mars principle, Mars is our will, our volition, our ability to actualize and um, express our identity, which was um, blocked for me from the time I was born. And I won't go into my story, but I understand a lot of my frustration and anger. I know where I direct it towards. And I want to, hmm, I want to depersonalize it because I understand that it is not about the person who came in to play that role for me to be able to have it externalized and make it conscious and realize that, damn, I am angry. And this is why I'm angry. And this is what they did. And this is what happened. And this is how I felt about it. That's the story. And while I do advocate telling your story, there's a process to the healing. And, um, while we're still in that wounded part of the story where we're working towards healing, but we've identified what it is and we're able to talk about it. That's part of the process. Um, and then when you can get to the point where you're sort of outside of yourself and the story as an observer looking in and saying, okay, you know, this is the story arc. This is the quote hero's journey, and these are the characters, yes, but what did it show us? What did it show us? And what were the beliefs? What was the belief structure? What is the underlying unconscious belief structure that came from this experience as we internalized it and repressed it and became part of our shadow? And what part of that story have we been telling ourselves over and over again in that self talk? Um, and what part of that is not really true? Because on one level, it was true. Okay. You know, in the sense that reality is multidimensional, just as we are, there's the actual literal story of what happened in the quote physical world of it. Then there's the mental and emotional part, there's the repressed part. And yes, while this was true, there is another perspective. It is also true that the mind interpreted it in a certain way, took in certain messages, and that became our truth at that time. Because at that time, we were only able to perceive one dimension of the issue. But as we grow and learn and we become more conscious, become more aware of who we are and how things work here and how we function on the mental, emotional plane in relation to what happens in the physical outward, um, and going within and, as we say, transmuting those things. There's another way of looking at this and catching ourselves in that self talk, that narrative is the key right now, I think, to healing a portion of that wound that caused by the experience, because starting to look at what is the repetitive pattern, we have to at some point look at the fact that, wow, like there's a pattern here. What's the deal? What's the message? What is this trying to tell me about me? And not to put fault and blame, but to show us a part of ourselves that is yet unhealed, that is playing out these circumstances with a similar theme because there's something deeper that we need to see. Even if we thought, well, we've been through this before. Why is this happening again? I can't believe I fell for it, or I didn't see it, or how did I find myself in this circumstance? It's because there's a deeper layer. There's more. There's more to be excavated, more dirt to be dug up from the subconscious, more healing. And it's okay. You're going to be better off for it. And this is the part of the release with Mars coming to the South Node. There's an act of consciously releasing, but we have to see it first. It's good if we can talk about it. I am not one who relishes talking about my painful experiences, though some would disagree with that because people who know me know that if you know me very well, I will talk about, and I will often, not often, but I will refer back to things from the past and part of the story. And what a lot of people have not understood about me in the past is that I need to talk about how I feel. I have an air sign moon. I transmute my feelings by talking about them. And the reason why I have so much repressed stuff is because in my growing up, I was not allowed to talk about things. If it's negative, especially if it's about that other person and it's negative, you know, you're criticizing me and you're not allowed to do that, right? So it was not okay. I was told your feelings are not important in this matter. So of course that makes you angry. And of course I would have experiences where I'm trying to express myself. Yes, I'm angry, but the other person is rejecting what I'm hearing because all they're hearing is me accusing them and blaming them and that I'm angry with them. And so that has been a difficulty. So, yeah, you find a therapist and then you talk about so and so. So you can have your therapist say, wow, what a piece of shit. And that feels so fucking good. And I'm like, right? Can you believe it? Like, why would they do that? And it just feels good, to be heard and seen and acknowledged. But oftentimes, when you're dealing with someone else who's not healed and has not made certain things conscious, and they're going to react subconsciously and reject what you have to say when you're confronting them with what they've done. So it makes for sometimes a difficult exchange. Again, what I'm seeing in this configuration where we're at. How did I get from Kim Porter to this? Oh, God, I'm such a rabbit trailer. Oh man. So the poisoning degree. I mean, we can look at this as literal or figurative, um, with the star of Hydra, Alphard, the heart of the the Hydra, and how that relates to the heart and poisoning of the heart, in a metaphorical sense, um, a releasing of or like a detoxing, an emotional detox because somebody lets the steam out if you can, um, by talking about it, by sharing your experiences, by um, just being able to articulate what you've been through and have other people hear you, whether they like it or not, who cares? Um, there's just something about getting it out and pushing it through the voice box and out of your mouth that opens up the heart. Because think about it, the air as the energy coming through the lungs and through that section of the body where the heart chakra is and releasing it. It's like a pressure cooker where you let the steam out by opening up the valve. It's very therapeutic, and very healing. So it doesn't matter what anyone thinks of it. Who cares if they call you bitter? But for yourself, I would say it's important to end this end the story with a solution, or be able to acknowledge for yourself, if not for other people really, but for yourself, where it's led you, to the degree of what you've realized and what you've learned and the wisdom that you have to share because of what you've been through. Um, because the poison, it will shut down the body and the heart and our growth and our Kundalini rising, if you will. Um, I feel like the celebrity stuff, because Kim Porter was allegedly poisoned, we're looking at that as a marker of this surfacing within the collective where there has been a wrong and where the healing can begin, because we can talk about it now and it's being acknowledged and we're feeling like, wow, there is some sense of justice. It's just that the offenses run so deep and there is a whole network, and there has been a lot of dot connecting, and it's very important because, like I said, you cut off one head of the snake, three grow back. So I'm following this case with interest. uh I don't know what will happen. I hope that he doesn't take the coward's way out and delete himself, because I think that it would be very healing for the public to see that, what everyone kind of already knows is being dealt with. So, on the exoteric level, we're seeing manifestation of what is happening, or what has been happening, or what is being released, and what is coming up from the subconscious to be healed in terms of relationships, toxic relationships, toxic behavior, specifically. And, I mean, if I'm using that as a specific example, very toxic behavior among men, um, especially men in the public eye. Where are the male role models who are modeling integrity and strength, wisdom, courage. Where them dudes at? Where have all the cowboys gone? Ah, anyway. Um, yeah. We have to see how toxic things are before we can heal them. And we have to talk about it. It's very important. Very important. So, just personally for me, what added to my anger over the over many, many years, we won't age me, but not being able to talk about how I feel, being criticized for just, being angry. Can you imagine victimizing someone and criticizing them for being disgruntled, disappointed, angry? You know, you're just a bitter person. Yeah, there's a reason why. So, I can tell you. It's very important to be able to express these things, even if you just go to a therapist or vent with one trusted friend who understands that they're not there to give you a solution. Though, you know, if they're known for their wisdom, I would listen to their advice, but just somebody to allow you to blow off steam without judgment, without telling you what you should do or shouldn't do, and then judge you when you do not follow along with their opinion of what you should do. It would be very helpful for the next week or so. Just because of the aspects, I'm telling you, it's been building, but it's really being triggered now. We have the moon, Uranus, sudden triggers, sudden bursts of anger, reaction, taking action, being assertive. It's not all bad. Um, there could be a little bit of an obsessive vibe to it, as the moon is trine to Pluto, where there is a fixated desire and focus on getting what we want, getting what we need. However, don't fail to take into consideration that there are other people that could be collateral damage and casualties in your misguided and selfish actions. Acknowledge the feelings, check what it is that you're feeling and why you have a, sudden impulse or urge to act. But be very cautious, and you can channel this energy into a very, very good and productive uh, outlet. So just make sure that it's not self-destructive. So we have a grand Earth trine today. Um, let's see. It's still early yet. I don't think the moon has quite caught up with Uranus, but there can be a lot of anxiety because it's this underlying feeling of something big about to happen. Um, we're all feeling it. Um, but there is a way to speak things into manifestation today because moon in an earth sign, that's a way to ground our feelings, to use them and channel them in such a way that uh, it makes contact with our physicality, that it matters, that I hate the word manifest, that it causes to be formed something into matter. Think about the moon as the element of water and the let's say Taurus and Uranus in Taurus as the element of earth, and earth and water forms into clay. So we can use this to form something that would be a literal building block or metaphorical um, to shape something that matters in our materium. And Mercury, that's the mind. It's literal, it's physical, it's concrete, it's in an earth sign. Virgo. Virgo tends to the details. It wants to know. It takes in data and processes it and analyzes it. So there's a way here of an understanding, coming to an understanding of how things manifest physically rather than a concept, an emotion, an idea, a passion, a desire, an inspiration. What does it take to become real or quote real, right? Pluto, also in an earth sign, Capricorn. Now, Capricorn deals with, let's say, achievement, ambition, uh, a sense of maturity and wisdom, but that is gained by not just knowledge on an intellectual level, it's experiential because you've gone through it physically. You didn't just read a book, you didn't just study it, you lived it. And therefore, you have certain a certain right and a hard-earned reward for your achievements. That's Capricorn. And Capricorn is long-term. It takes a long time. It's ruled by Saturn. Saturn is Chronos, time. So we're dealing with time and the physical world, matter, material, um, and an understanding of time and physical space in terms of how to create and innovate. That's where Uranus comes in. But we do have to look at the rulerships of the signs, and the moon and Uranus are ruled by Venus because Taurus is associated with the planet Venus. So it all comes back to our creativity, our ability to generate, reproduce. That's Leo. And that energy is also associated with the sun and the warmth and life that the sun generates, because we wouldn't be here. So I hope that all made sense to everyone. I'm going to post this not as a live, but a pre-recorded session because I'm not sure that people realize, although I do have my regular subscribers, I guess they get notifications when I do my Sunday shows, but because I stream them live, um, they go under my channel under the live tab. So if you go to the channel, you see videos, you see shorts, you see live, The Sunday shows don't fall under videos. Only the pre-recorded things do. So, all of my Sunday shows have been showing up under the live tab, and I don't know if everyone is really seeing that. So I decided to do a pre-recorded show, so that way this one will show up under videos, and we'll see what happens. But as far as the rest of the day goes, um, it's a great productive energy. I mean, there's so much being aspected today. Most of the planets are in the last 5 degrees of that zodiac sign, and that would be starting with the moon because it moves so quickly, and it's about the moon aspects, always about, for me, about the moon aspects, because the moon is what triggers. And we start with the Uranus moon, and that is what I was talking about: breakthrough, breakdown, enlightenment, um, inspiration, a sudden jolt of electricity. That is Uranus energy. It totally has a uh, what do you call it? Like alternative technologies kind of a vibe to it, in terms of things like Tesla coils and Rife machines. Um, the internet has been rife with Rife lately. So, I don't know. I'm like, obviously, a lot of people are talking about uh weird energy anomalies, let's say, whether it comes from the sun or it comes from your phone and radiation and solar flares and EBS broadcasts. So we're looking at Uranus. Let the games begin today, October 2nd. So, moon aspects. We have the moon Uranus conjunction, as I stated. Then we have an inconjunct to Mars. This is a curveball, a sudden thing you did not see coming, sudden action taken by a person, a knee-jerk reaction, something weird, something crazy, something wow, like somebody just wants to kick off the, how do you put it? The horse is bucking out of its saddle. This energy does not want to be restrained any longer. It needs to be released. So we've got the moon squaring to Venus. I mean, this is really kind of great, actually, if in terms of romance and creative type uh, partnerships, or I just see there's a lot of like passion and zest for life, joie de vivre here. And we don't want the things that are hindering us anymore, whether it's a person, a relationship, a situation, a job, a mindset, an outdated belief, a lie, whatever it is, we want to be free. But it comes with a sacrifice that we have to make. And the way that we can do this in a symbolic action uh, would be the Mars symbolic action of releasing. Mars is fire and it's in Libra. That is Wind. I like burning. Love burning shit. Burning things. Burning things, which is a great thing to do to release. Uh, but also because the moon is in a earth sign, moving the physical body. Um, Moon in Taurus, I will say, feels very sedentary and very like stoic and unmovable and kind of lazy. So if you are feeling a lot of anxiety or angst or whatever, um, do some exercises, move that body. Go for a walk, jog, hike. Getting the body moving will help to move that energy through your body so you don't put your fist through a wall. Or go have sex if you can. And so let's see what else. So the moon is aspecting Venus, it's aspecting Mars in an uncomfortable way. It will be uncomfortable if you don't do something about it. That's the key to this. But also to help you to somehow process it through your analytical, concrete thinking mind, left brain, being able to talk about it, making a plan, doing something different because Mercury has been trine to Uranus. So, um, being able to streamline your day-to-day activities so that it makes adjustment for the changes that are happening. That's another use of this energy. And the moon, like I said, squaring to Venus. We want emotionally, we want to act because there is an uncomfortability factor here that things are just too stagnant for too long. And if we don't do something, we're going to end up frustrated. And that's when we get into trouble. And that's when we have road rage. And that's when we have people, popping off and doing stupid shit. The moon is sextile to Neptune at 26 degrees of Pisces. So there is a another water earth energy, and Neptune is highly imaginative and creative. So there is a way to put these feelings into good use. And then last but not least, we have the moon making a trine to Pluto. And this is loosely by degree completing a grand trine in Earth of the moon, Mercury in Virgo. Um, I'm sorry, the moon in Taurus, Mercury in Virgo, Uranus in Taurus, and Pluto in Capricorn. Um, with Capricorn at the last few, I'm sorry, Pluto in Capricorn at the last few degrees of Pluto in Wait, yeah, Pluto in Capricorn at the last few degrees and in retrograde and on the United States Pluto. This is again, as I've said before, the crumbling structure of the old government, the old economy. So there is something here about the failing, and we're getting a hint on what is the next domino to fall. I've noticed that the fighting in, between Congress and the Senate and hearings and votes for the budget and all of that, very, very heated. So I would expect too that we start to hear stuff about the financial sector because things are crumbling at the very, very top where the average person doesn't live. Like, how many of you guys own treasury bonds? I don't. So the average person doesn't understand what the implications are when there is talk of treasury bond sell-offs and, you know, defaults because the bonds represent debt. But it's a serious thing. So the cascading effect, I would expect we start to have that conversation today. And again, that goes to the fear, right? Like probably instability in the markets because of the fear and and the panic and, economically and financially and in terms of investment markets. I would imagine that a sudden trip off of information causes panic, causes fear, um, and the knee-jerk response is a sell-off, and then next thing you know, the stock market is falling. So let's see. I don't know. I guess that's about it for my musings today. And I'm happy to be back doing these pop-ups during the week. Um, if you didn't listen to my show yesterday, uh, I have to apologize for the 3-hour show. It's like every time I say, I need to make this shorter, it seems to get longer. But I know why it is. It's also because for 2 weeks, I didn't do a show in the middle of the week. And the midweek shows for me tends to be more concentrated on the specific alignments that are going on specific to that day, and then talking a little bit about the asteroids and the stars. So I was doing a lot of that on yesterday's show. So that's why it was so long. Like, oh my God. That's like, wow, 3 hours. No, that's not a good thing. It's not what I want to be doing. I know that there's a lot of people that enjoy my work and I've gotten a good feedback from them, but I also know that they're busy people. Who's going to listen to a 3-hour show? Unless you're me. I listen to shows that like that. But anyway, I really don't, not too much anymore. I don't have the time for it. And there's just very few people that I listen to that would do that long of a show that I think it's worth spending that much time. But anyway, um, yeah, I guess I hope I was able to tie in the esoteric that I'm seeing and how it relates to the exo part of it. Um, there are other cases that I'm following that I'm seeing developments in that I think, wow, you know what? At least 3 cases, true crime cases that I could name off the top of my head that it actually looks like the person that they have standing accused of the crime may not be guilty. And how crazy is that when you have for months and months the public, hanging on the fact that, wow, they got the person and he's guilty and rejecting all of this judgment and hatred towards one person and making them the scapegoat of their fears and um, anger regarding that type of individual, typecast for that role. When imagine how are people going to feel? How are they going to react when they find out that person was never guilty? That there could have been a botched investigation, that evidence could have been planted, that God forbid, but it does happen, that law enforcement itself was culpable in covering up, if not guilty of colluding with, but covering up because they don't want it to come out. Obviously, they don't want people to make the connection that they, in fact, are the very criminals that people think that they are hired and tasked with bringing to justice and protecting, serving and protecting the public. And this is part of what I mean when I say that our reality is crumbling and a lot of the things that people think are true are indeed, in fact, completely opposite. The people that you think might be helping are actually the worst offenders and bringing the most harm. And reality is about to get turned on its head, turned ass up in so many ways, on so many levels. It's happening. You think we've been living in clown world for the past few years? But yeah, I mean, we have, but like it's been a smaller part of the population, let's say a certain portion of the collective that has been inclined to look at things differently, who takes an alternate perspective. We will not call them the C word, but it's been a smaller segment that's been looking and saying, oh my God, how ridiculous, because we see things for what they are. What about the average person who is just starting, by the way, to look around and say, but I don't get it. This doesn't make sense. There's something wrong here. And it takes a while for you to unravel it. But you see that there is a fog. You see that there's lies and deception, and something is stinky. Uh, but you know that foggy feeling. You know the feeling of being in a situation where you're like, there's something weird here. There's something going on. Something is not right. I don't know what it is. And it takes some time, but this is one of those times. Mercury opposite Neptune. We've been having, let's see, we had Mars opposite Neptune. We had the Sun opposite Neptune, challenging the lie, challenging the narrative, bringing light where there is darkness. Now we have Mercury, the literal, conscious, concrete, left-brained, analytical part of the psyche opposing Neptune. That's going to break some people, you know? Yeah, that's going to break some people because nothing makes sense. Then that means that the rules that we all thought we had to follow, people are not going to follow them anymore. And this is the breaking part of the breaking point here, because we will have Venus reach that position. Let's see when that will be exactly. In this fourfold process that begins with the will, the action, the anger, the yang, the push energy of Mars, and then the enlightenment and illumination of the sun, let's say. Now we have Mercury, the mind, being able to communicate and assimilate, or trying. That's a challenge right now with Neptune. and then sort of rewrite our relationships, our values, our financial situation, our monetary situation. So November 8th, when it could be the 7th into the 8th, when Venus goes into Libra, um, that will end the opposition. So Venus will begin to start getting close to, let's look at October 30th for the relational, the passion and um, creative, let's say, or anything having to do with finances, love and money, two sides of the same Venus coin. So let's just, for brevity's sake, put it under the heading of love and money. Money, but resources. October 31st, Venus will reach the degree of Mercury's station. So, what Mercury, the mind, has processed and decided and has understood, Venus comes in, and Venus is, it's beauty, it's love, it brings in a need and a desire to connect, but going through Virgo, I'm sure we're going to be judging our relationships on some level. And around the 30th, 31st of October, we'll start to have an opposition, Venus opposed to Neptune, because we need to be able to see our relationships from a practical level, from a literal sort of hmm, well, literal and practical, physical, concrete, materialistic, uh, helpful, I think, helpful and practical. It doesn't sound very Venusian, but it is. And it's really um, seeing reality and seeing the relationships for what they are. That's what I need to say. In Virgo, Venus, but judging and being very critical, we could be looking at that kind of an energy. Um, but Venus passing over or opposite Neptune, we need to see what we haven't seen. And this also does open the door somewhat for um, financial scandals and scams with Neptune being involved. So catfishing and weird stuff like that, but a lot of projection when it comes to relationships, people blaming the other person, not taking accountability, being too picky, being a perfectionista when it comes to your relationships, and maybe looking at where uh, you're projecting all of that onto someone else where you subconsciously don't feel like you're enough. So you tend to look at your partners like seeing all of their flaws under a microscope, highly critical, and maybe you need to look at yourself and say, you're not perfect, and practice Neptunian Piscean compassion. and forgiveness. But anyway, my point is the oppositions to Neptune, the next phase of it or level of it. Right now it's mental and communication. End of October, it'll be Venus, relational, and financial. But I'll go into that further because where there is economic stress and difficult news, there is also opportunity and um, possibilities for increasing your the value of your assets or whatever you have, ways of investing or ways of making money at that time. So don't freak out. I think we're going to hit, bumps, definite bumps, especially with the eclipse. I think that is going to bring a break in the stability that we thought was there, because that's all an illusion. But opportunities come with that. And I think we're maybe starting to really realize that by the end of October. So that's interesting. I'm just wanted to fast forward to say, when are we really past the difficult parts of the Neptunian aspects? And that would be the end of October. So that does bring hope. But we do have the eclipse, the first eclipse coming up on the 14th. We'll talk further about that soon. But as of today, it's all about the late degrees of Taurus. I'm sorry. It also includes the North Node. Failed to mention that. Aries, late degrees. Aries, Taurus, Leo, and Libra, and Capricorn. So if you have planets or placements at around 25 to 30 degrees and perhaps a little bit before that, most astrologers will give like a 5 to 8 degrees orb. So orb means how close the planet is in degree by degree to being exact to a conjunction or an aspect. So I guess you could say 20 degrees. So that's like the last decan. Decans are 10 degrees. So the last 10 degrees of these signs, you can include yourself. But you've probably already been feeling it. If your planets are in the earlier degrees of those signs, you would have gotten the transits of the planets of, let's say, Pluto would have been over the span of, let's say, 3 years. Even Uranus has been over the last few years, Uranus and Taurus. But most recently, the Venus stuff, that's the Venus retrograde. And that would have been pretty much all of Leo. And then the transits to Virgo is very important. And then Libra, because you know, we have the transit of the sun right now. We have Mars there. We have the South Node there. So there's been a lot of action. So if you have those planets in the later degrees of those signs, oh, and Pisces. Sorry, Pisces. I didn't mean to exclude you. That's also a long-term thing with Neptune. That's been years. So we're pretty well acclimated to that. And, shout out to Taurus too, because Taurus has had Jupiter in their sign as well as Uranus. A lot of changes to a very physical, literal sign that loves its stability, doesn't really deal with changes all that well, unless they're the one making them. So I guess that wraps it up for today. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said. And I want to post this. And I hope that you all enjoy this beautiful graphic that I've used for my screen here. And this comes from Urania's Mirror, published somewhere in the late 1800s. Um, it's a beautiful, beautiful artwork depicting the uh, the constellations and the representations of the mythology. So you have the Hydra, you have oh gosh, there's the owl. If I could remember what constellation that was, but there's Corvus, the crow, the raven, um, crater, which is the cup. There's sextans, which is the navigational instrument. And there is, oh, this looks like a lynx, but I cannot remember. And something else. I've got to look these up. These are more obscure. And then Argo Navis down in the right hand corner. Some of the stars are marked on here also. So you could see Hydra after that first coil of the serpent. And if you look above that, there's Regulus, also known as Corleonis, and Vindamatrix, which is in Virgo, Spica and Arcturus, Zuban al-Janubi, which is in constellation Libra. Anywho, I'll leave it there and stop the recording for now. As always, thank you for listening. I appreciate you. And if you would not mind hitting the like button, if you have not already subscribed, I appreciate your subscription also. And um, if you found this helpful and you like my work, please share it so that other people can benefit. And it's very helpful to me. Um, what else do I want to say? Yeah, go check out Rumble. Subscribe to my Rumble channel. I will be uploading there in the future. So it's something that if you're on Rumble, you will want to follow. Find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if you are interested in booking my time for a reading or a coaching session, you can contact me at astrolunachick@gmail.com. You can send me a direct message on social media. You can also leave a message or text me on the Astrolunachick hotline at 914-222-1231 and save that, put it on speed dial for when I have my live shows on Sunday, where we'll be doing open lines, taking questions, and doing free readings. So get excited. We're going to be having fun, dudes. Sundays around the noonish time hour, around the noon o'clock Eastern. 9 o'clock on the West Coast, if you get up that early. Anywho, I'm going to sign off saying goodbye. Ciao for now.